Today, I'm in conversation with Trisha and Arjun Vaidya, the co-founders at Dr. Vaidya's, a company that's been around for 150 years, specializing in Ayurvedic herbal medicine. Arjun decided to take his grandfather's dream forward and create a brand out of Dr. Vaidya's. I chat with husband and wife about how it is to work together, entrepreneurship, and actually how they sold their company. I hope you enjoy this conversation and take a lot of learnings from it, which I did too. Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of The Shan Show. I'm very excited to have Arjun and Trisha with me, the co-founders of Dr. Vaidya's. We're talking all things Ayurveda today. We're talking entrepreneurship, and you guys just sold your business, so I'm excited to know more about that. It's the first time I'm talking to a husband and wife duo, so great to hear
By the
from
way, Shan, this is Trisha's first ever podcast.
Yeah. Not
So
gonna
she's
lie.
super nervous for this conversation.
I'm very excited to have you. And honestly, I keep it very casual. So don't worry about that. I'm going to have you answer a lot of questions. But my first question is for you, Arjun. How did you start Dr. Vaidya's? Tell us a little bit about the company. You left your a lucrative job to kind of start this. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so actually, my last name Vaidya means Ayurvedic doctor. And so Ayurveda has been in our family for quite some time now. It's 150 years of Ayurveda legacy in the family. So my grandfather, great grandfather, and generations before all Ayurvedic doctors. We didn't have a business. My dada ran a clinic, which he inherited from his father. And so it was sort of family legacy. As a family, we owned a large IP of more than 100 plus formulations passed down from generation to generation. So this is what we sort of inherited. My dad graduated from college, and he thought that he could make this a brand. My dad was a very famous doctor. He had 350 patients a day coming to his clinic. But he was not someone who cared for sales, distribution, marketing, or strategy. He was a doctor, and that's what he cared about. So my dad tried to do it, but doctors and businessmen don't see eye to eye. And so eventually my dad went his own way and started a business in the jewelry and watch space, and has been running that for a while. But I grew up with asthma. So I suffered from age 2. I grew up with pumps, nebulizers, steroids, inhalers. And asthma also stopped me from playing cricket. So I was pulled out of the cricket academy in second grade by my dada. And so asthma had like a pretty deep impact on my life. I'd not tried ice cream till I was like 12 or 13 years old. Never had Coca-Cola or Fanta or any of those things that all kids at that time used to have. Kids today don't have it, but when we were growing up, we used to have that at birthday parties, right? So 14 years of treatment or 13 years of treatment, my dada cured me of asthma. To me, that was a turning point in my life, like a really big moment. When I moved from Cathedral to the Ambani school, I started playing cricket again, and I was made captain of the school cricket team. Not because I was the best player, because I was the most passionate and most enthusiastic guy. But that was really sort of turning point for me. And then I went to the US for my undergrad. I went to Brown, and I saw a move towards natural organic products. But I also saw yoga being repackaged with like yoga mats, yoga gyms, yoga apparel. There's this multi-billion-dollar industry in the US that took what we had and sort of repackaged it, made it cool, and sold it back to us. And I was like, we can't let the same happen with Ayurveda. So I came back to India in 2013. I started this job working in private equity at Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy's private equity fund, and spent a lot of time on the Indian consumer sectors specifically, right? And also got to spend time on e-commerce. Fortunately, 2013-14 was when things were just starting up in India. And at the same time, Indian consumption had changed. Like, we were happy to consume quintessentially Indian brands. We grew up in India where I was gifted a Japanese electronic sharpener for my 11th birthday from a shop that only sold imported products, right? That was the India that we grew up in, and it changed. But also Ayurveda was undergoing a renaissance, right? So we had government change, Ministry of Ayush creation, Patanjali revolution happen, and all of these customers like you start getting interested in Ayurveda. So all of this was happening. I was in this job, and then my dada passed, right? And so we had this legacy, we had these formulations. I made a promise to him at some point growing up that I'd do something with it. And so, I was like 24 and a half, and my ex-boss basically just told me, look, there's only 2 times you can start a business in your life, at 25 and 50. And I'm 50 now, so that's now I can look at it, but this is the time you need to do it, or you'll get stuck like me until you're 50. And so I just sort of took the punt. I quit my job, and I said, look, I'm going to take my dada's legacy forward. So named the company after him. So there was no brand as such. So we called it Dr. Vaidya's. And the idea was to be sort of new age Ayurveda, or Ayurveda for the 21st century. So basically, I wanted to make a product that made Ayurveda or Chyawanprash appealing to you, right? That was the idea behind which we started. And yeah, October 2016 sort of started the company, and that's how it all began.
You've actually done that. It's a great story because I feel like today a lot of people, younger people, take more interest in Ayurveda and actually do their research because we are the Googling age, right? We Google everything.
Yeah.
So, what's the solution? And we're actually more interested in natural, herbal, Ayurveda stuff. So, I want to ask you, were there any things that you needed to consider before starting your business? I'm sorry, I'm asking Arjun the first initial questions, but was there anything that you had to keep in mind in terms of getting to be an entrepreneur? Because you were coming from a job, right? So what was that like?
Yeah, so I actually at that time I really didn't know better, to be honest. I just sort of started doing it. And I think that when it comes to starting a business or being a founder, I think sometimes ignorance is bliss, right? Had I known how hard it would have been, I probably wouldn't have done it. But now I've done it, I'm thankful for the journey, right? So I didn't really know much. I used to just read newspaper articles and I was in private equity, right? So I read about all these entrepreneurs raising all these funding rounds, and that's all you get to see, right? You get to see them on CNBC, and that to me seemed really alluring. And so I said, look, it's amazing, and like let me go ahead and do something that genuinely means a lot to our family as well. So I kicked that off. I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship. I worked in a very comfortable private equity job where people answered emails when you wrote emails, and I realized that the real world of building a business in India is very different. And so I didn't really have much consideration set starting the business. But 3 months in, I got a really big reality check. Like I remember my dad asking me the first few weeks that I started the company. Like I didn't have an office at that time. I had a small cabin in his office, and one person, one man show, trying to hire, do all of these things. And he was like, "Do you sleep at night?" And I was like, "Yeah, like I'm fine. I sleep at night." But very quickly, after sort of getting rejected a bunch of times and getting a few slaps on my face, got a reality check pretty quickly that I think starting a business is hard work.
Yeah.
Takes a lot out of you. But it's also a great leveler, right? We come from these like insulated worlds of like schools, colleges, jobs, all of those kind of things. And so in those places, you are sort of someone, right? And then you come to starting a business. And I remember actually the real leveler for me was I used to drive a Honda Jazz at that time. And I gave to a distributor, and I cannot grow facial hair actually, basically. So I can't grow a beard even today, right? So I have to basically go clean shaven to meetings.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, "Where's your boss?" And I was like, "No. I'm the CEO of the company." He's like, "No. Come on, tell me where's your boss?" Because
God,
there ain't no 25-year-old kids running Ayurveda companies and trying to sell in distribution. So I think it was good that I didn't know any of this, because it would have stopped me. But yeah, I think it's a great leveler though.
Yeah, that's actually a great example. You've said two things. One is that people actually answer your emails in the corporate world, right? Today here, we're like, it's difficult. People, you don't call you back for like 5 or 6 times that you call them. And the second thing is, I think it's good to hear. I mean, not good, but it's nice to hear that even a man wasn't taken seriously, because I felt that so many times. That when I'm trying to talk to somebody and they're like, "But where's your boss?" And I'm like, "Hey, no, I'm the boss." So I think that's a good learning for an entrepreneur. But Trisha, I want to ask you, how did you join and when did you join?
So mine was a little unlike Arjun. I didn't have the risk appetite, honestly, to start something on my own, right? So when he was thinking about leaving L Capital and starting Dr. Vaidya's, we were already dating at this point. And I took a stint I had a finance background, and I took a stint into doing marketing, just because both of us came from quite strong finance backgrounds. And both our parents actually told us that, you can't join till you're like engaged at least. That was quite a set rule. And the day we got engaged, I remember in March, and April 17th, I joined against every single person's wish possibly. Everyone thought, how are you going to plan a wedding? And, just getting newly engaged and doesn't seem like the right thing to do. Plus a startup comes with nothing but stress, right? But we both of us knew how we would balance each other out. And we said we would give it a fair try. So when I joined, it was quite obvious that if for some reason it didn't work out for us being together, it would be Arjun, right? And I would step away. But I don't think we ever had that problem. We were lucky. I can't lie about that. We were lucky. But yeah, so I joined him in April 2017, a couple of months after he had already started. And that's when I joined him.
Awesome, because I think, yeah, like a parent would always think from the point of view of, in case this didn't work out, then what? But I want to ask you, how is it working together? A lot of people do find it difficult to work with even a sister or a brother, for example, right? Because, or a parent, like I work with my mom and I know I mean, we work on so many projects together. It's not easy. But
Yeah.
what's it like? Do you take work home? Do you guys discuss it before you sleep? What's that dynamic?
To be honest, work took up 99.999% of our life. I'm not going to even exaggerate a little about that, but when you're in a startup, you don't have a choice. According to me, like maybe people have better ways of, having a work-life balance. We didn't. We didn't have any sort of work-life balance. I think it worked for us. To be honest, I don't think it works for everyone. I don't think I can work with every single one of my family members, to be honest, but I could work with Arjun. We had very clear demarcations of responsibilities. So if it came into something that was product related, larger in terms of finance, brand building, business development, it's all Arjun, right? So he has final say in that. When it came to things like operations, customer service, daily day-to-day marketing, performance marketing, then I had a say over there, right? So we kind of had divided the tasks quite well, I think. And at the end of the day, the interests were aligned, right? The interest was to make Dr. Vaidya's grow. So yeah, we used to have arguments for sure. But at the end of the day, who could argue the most and prove the point and be whose department is would get the final say. But there's one thing I think, having working together, you do have personal fights and professional, right? It's both. But it doesn't let you fight. You can't fight because you can't have a fight to last like 8 hours, 10 hours. No sulking is allowed because you don't talk to the person to be honest about work.
Yeah, correct. That's actually such a valid point. So any, couples that are looking to get into business together, this is a great way.
Yeah.
But I heard one thing about this, right? There are only two ways for it to go, is what I've heard, right?
Yeah.
It either goes really well or really badly. And there's no middle ground, whether it's a partner, whether it's a parent, a sibling, whatever it is, right? Because you share such a close relationship that it can either work and it may not work. And I think the other thing which really worked for us was like being really honest to say, hey, like I'm not good at this, right? So contrary to how society may perceive it, if it was finance related, right, and it was accounting related, or it was operations or logistics, all of the back end like hardcore parts of the business, society would have perceived that the man would be doing it, etc. All of that. But I didn't even look at it, right? So when my dad's CFO would come to talk to us about the P&L and about the accounts and about the data entry and stuff, he would not even talk to me. He would like just talk to her. And that's fine. I was like totally okay with it. And similarly, like branding, marketing, creative, content, all of that, I used to do all of it, right? And on that, maybe Trisha would say, hey, you can like think about this or think about that. But final call was mine, whether it was like writing copy, approving product packaging, investor relations, production, factory. Like we would fight, right? Because I would run the factory, but then she would run the operation. And so if we'd be running low on stock, she would fight and say, hey, like we're running low on stock, like your factory needs to give me more goods. But then I would look at eventually sales. So then I would say, hey, I don't stop my sales. Like I need my sales to keep pushing.
Yeah.
You'd go through all of those things.
You go through all of those. Like you said, and I thankfully for you guys, it's gone really well. Yeah. So even if there are two sides to that spectrum, but kudos to you, Trisha. I think that's great. You know, I'm not a finance person at all. So if you're managing stuff like that, I shouldn't really say it. There's no gender bias when it comes to that. Okay, I want to ask you, Arjun, you've made Ayurveda cool. Okay, let me just put it that way, in the simplest way. For the youth, for the younger generation, were there certain, was there a path that you followed to market this? Did you say, I'm going to name these things differently? Is my copy going to be lighter? What was that like?
Yeah, so there were sort of two phases to the journey. The first phase was 24-and-a-half-year-old me saying that my dada used to sell diabetes, arthritis, and asthma medicine, and I'm too young and cool to sell that. So I went by saying, hey, we're going to go completely new age, right? We're going to just break the barrier with Ayurveda. And so we launched just two products when we started. One is called Live It Up, the hangover product. And the other is called HerboFit, which is a Chyawanprash in capsule, right? So Chyawanprash is black, bitter, sticky, and convenient. And so we sort of repackaged into a capsule so you can have multivitaminized version. So this was sort of Dr. Vaidya's 1.0 in 2016, 2017, two product company, etc. All of that. And for that, we were like super disruptive, right? So I'd spend like every Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, Trisha and I both outside a bar, like literally handing out Live It Up, doing all of these sampling events. And we gave, by the way, 2.5 lakh packets of Live It Up free in the first 15, 17 months, right? So at least in Bombay, most people knew the product, right? They may not have known that it came from this Dr. Vedya's entity, but everybody knew Live It Up, and people thought we were just Live It Up. And that was a great part of the journey, because honestly, it taught us the hustle, it taught us how to take customer feedback, it taught us all of that. But we realized sort of one year in-ish, when Trisha took the call that we're going to be an online brand, that 2 products isn't going to cut it. 2 products isn't going to build a really large business. And so fortunately for us, we had the IP and the formulations, etc. So the 2.0 version was Ayurveda through a digital format or a D2C format, in a way that's appealing and accessible to you, right? So my dada used to give a free consultation in his clinic, and we moved this online, right? So he said, I don't want your income or your status or your class to prevent you from coming to see me. And the medicine will be reasonable, and the medicine's always been reasonable and continues to be reasonable. So we took this free consultation online. We made copy easy. We made product names easy. We didn't look. My grandmother knows that Amla is 65% of Chavanprash, and Bringraj goes into a hair oil, and Brahmi is a concentration herb, right? It helps you with concentration and sort of it's a neural tonic, but we don't know that, right? And so we went off the assumption that customers knew it, and we used easy names and easy communication and sort of an online medium to do this. And that was really sort of what made Dr. Vedya a success. We had super innovative products. We launched Chavanprash in a toffee. No one's ever done that, and I hope no one ever does that. We launched Ayurvedic muscle gain product, which was #1 bestseller on Amazon. We launched a female sexual wellness product, a PCOS supplement. So we launched uniquely innovative products as well, but it was not only innovative products. It was innovative products plus other products in a format that's appealing and accessible to you. And that was really sort of what made Ayurveda easy to understand. It was a struggle, right? To convince customers who are accustomed to buying Ayurveda offline to come online. But there was latent demand, and we were the first people to sort of try to make this happen. So it took a while to get it going, but eventually it worked.
Yeah, I think you did make it very easy. And like you said, you think your customer knows it all, but it's just how you bring it across to them. I have one more question for you. If someone is starting out in the Ayurvedic business, I mean, anything to do, like you said, yoga, natural, stuff like that, are there a lot of challenges that you faced initially? Because I mean, I can understand that your dada did it, but he did it differently. Yeah. And those were these were the older day things where you had a consultation free, come, I'll give you the medicine kind of thing. But were there any challenges that you faced?
Yes, so see, I'll tell you honestly, right? In general, building a brand in India is a really, really big challenge, because you're, in most cases, right, you're in a space which is dominated by large national brands, which have like a footprint and tens of years, sometimes even more than 100 years of experience. And they've probably done like 10 million, 20 million, 100 million transactions, right? So you have to establish your credibility in the marketplace. And whether it was Ayurveda, health, wellness, yoga, natural, or whether it's just generally building a brand, I think building the trust and credibility and standing on your own 2 feet is really important. For me, I had my dada, but my dada had sort of access to a pocket, right? Which was largely sort of Mumbai, etc. And he had some patients from outside, but we literally had to build the brand from scratch, right? Who is Dr. Vedya's? Why should I trust you? Like, I don't even know you, right? So establishing the credibility and working to build a brand, that's really important, because that takes a while and there's no hack to it, right? You can't build a trustworthy brand in like 30 days. It doesn't happen. So I think it took heavy lifting, and it took a lot of patience from our end. Like, young folks who just like go to the office every day, and like, you know, there were times I would sit in front of my laptop and say, please, just emails come into this laptop. Like, I want to see sales. I want to see something, right? And I remember in 2017, we did 1 order every 3 days on our website. We would cheer every order, right? And then sort of from there, going to 10, 20, 30, 1 year later, 50 orders. It took its time. But once we hit that 50 orders mark, right, then we sort of skyrocketed or exponentially scaled from there. So I think brand building takes time. But the other thing which is really interesting and exciting now is when we started building an e-commerce brand, 2016, 2017, that time was tough to build an e-commerce brand, because like customers weren't buying online. They were buying on Amazon, but they would not come to your website and buy, right? And I give this example a lot. Firstly, online behavior has changed since 2016 significantly.
Yes.
And secondly, we were living in this time with this pandemic, right? So my dad, being the father of an e-commerce entrepreneur, never placed an order online in his life until April 2020. He did his first order on Amazon. He has done 20 plus orders on Amazon since then in 1 year, and now goes on his Instagram feed, clicks on XYZ brand's quinoa pasta, buys the pasta, and then calls their customer service number if they're late and says, hey, like, why are you so late? Like, I know that it takes only 24 hours or 48 hours to reach. Yeah, basically, when you're building a brand, building the trust and credibility is really important. And I think it takes time. There's no way for you to hack it. But if you look at e-commerce as well, right, in general, the world is very different from what it was in 2016, right? And so now it's much easier actually to build a digital brand or an e-commerce brand because D2C is now the norm, right? It's accepted and it's a way to build brands now.
Yeah. So Trisha, tell me about you. Entrepreneurship is such I would say it's a different game. You learn on the move, like Arjun said, you learn every day. So you do something today, you might change your view 1 week later. What was it like for you? Since you said it was a leap that you took as well, and you weren't sure about building your own brand, but what was basically building Dr. Vaidya's with Arjun like?
So honestly, it was tough. I think that's something people don't talk about. Entrepreneurship just seems sexy all the time, but it's really not. It is a lot of hard work. It kind of pushes you to every single limit, right? You have to become an excellent multitasker. You have to be able to push through no matter what. You have 18-hour days, 22-hour days. It's nothing. Like, it doesn't matter, right? You don't have sleep for a few days. It's okay. You really have to push through it all. I think you also have to learn to accept that some things are just not going to be in your hands. Like, you are reliant on many external factors, and whatever is in our control, we should focus on completely. And whatever we can do to make sure the external factors fall in line, we do it. The thing with, Dr. Vaidya's and running a business was that the moment you started reaching certain milestones, you always wanted to do more. You always wanted to do more, right? It never ends. Your list of what you can do never ends, according to me. But I think one thing that I learned, or we probably both learned together through the journey, is you have to set small milestones. You have to set certain milestones to reach the larger goal, right? And to celebrate each milestone. So we used to have certain milestones when we had 100 orders a day, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 orders a day, certain milestones on B2B business, certain milestones on Amazon. And we made sure that when we hit that milestone, we actually celebrated it. So we had a small system of celebrating, cutting a cake in the office. It wasn't nothing like very fancy, but just it was a good way for the team to come together and actually just appreciate everyone's work that they've done. And I think just learning how to deal with people, I think that's one of the toughest things, was hiring the right people and then keeping them motivated, because you are giving it 500%, right? Every single day as a founder. So you kind of start expecting that of people, which is not fair in a way. So you have to try and balance it for yourself. And then how do you try and make the employees still give you 250% at least, But I think that was another skill set that I really learned.
Yeah, that's great. And, I want to ask both of you this question individually, is that when I was going to college, there was no entrepreneurship course, right? It's not 20, 40 years ago, but even like 5 or 7 years ago, there wasn't something dedicated. So do you think like people who I talk to, a lot are nervous. They're like, I can't run a business on my own. There's a lot of downs more than the ups. So do you think it takes certain skills, number one, and do you think they need to have like certain personality traits to be an entrepreneur and succeed as one? So Arjun, you want to go first?
Yeah. So look, I think like there is no way to teach it, in my opinion, right? It's like very difficult to teach. So I remember like when I was in private equity, I did my GMAT and I wanted to do an MBA. And then I eventually started Dr. Vaidya's, and my dad showed me the loss on my P&L for the first year. And he said, that's what a Harvard MBA costs. But this is much, much better for you because this is sort of real world learning. So I think that there is no way to teach it as such. But I think if I was to talk about just the two skills that I think I've seen in the best founders as well. And by the way, I learned from speaking to people, people I knew and sometimes people I didn't know as well, and just like respected. I'd write them cold emails and say, I just want to learn. I'm like, at that time I was a 25-year-old guy, so everyone was willing to talk and have a conversation. I think the first is grit and resilience, and we've learned it through COVID, but really, as part of your entrepreneurial journey, you hear no more times in a day than you hear yes. And that's fine. Like, that's okay, right? But being able to accept it and being able to accept that failure, I think that's one. And two, you have to have that constant want for more.
Yeah.
Just like that insatiable desire to keep scaling. Like I remember, I would think at one order every 3 days, that 100 orders a day would be a dream. When you get to 100, you're like 200, 300, 400, 500. Right? My team always knew that even if we hit 5,000 orders a day, there's a day we did 11,000 orders in one day, right? But like, we're like, okay, now how do we make 11,000 every day, not just one day? So I think these two things, I thought were really, really important. The second one I had it inbuilt. Like, I always wanted to do more and I always wanted to grow, but with the first one, I really had to learn, because it takes a lot to get slapped on the face and get back up every time.
Absolutely. Trisha, what about you?
So I think Arjun covered most of it with the grit and resilience part. But the other thing I think that people, and I've kind of spoken to a bunch of people right now also, and they're like, what is your quick way? What is the shortcut to, reaching that? There genuinely isn't any. Like, I think that right now, yes, from when we started our business to now, the ecosystem has developed. So there are many enablers that can aid you to kind of grow faster in certain way and take off certain operational headaches maybe that we had to go through and do ourselves. But I don't think there is a shortcut, right? There is no shortcut. Just because I want to reach, $1 million a month, that doesn't mean that it's so easy to get there. It takes a lot of hard work. You also have to be extremely consistent. So that's actually one thing I learned from Arjun. You have to be extremely consistent. Be it about anything, right? Be it about, like, he's become really good at, he always had a passion for writing, and his LinkedIn profile, for example, right? He's done it consistently well, being super particular about how the branding looks or launching new products, right? Consistently doing it well. So we have to, like, even when it came to performance marketing or operations, right? How do you consistently keep improving also? So we actually did small things like that have weekly calls, weekly chats, depending on the department, to try and keep improving. Because otherwise you kind of run with blinders. You're just doing. So you have to pause at times and think that what else can I do to improve it? So I think, honestly, you have to be extremely consistent. You can't have one good day or one good week and think, oh, now I can, relax and my team can run it as is. It doesn't work.
I actually like what both of you said. One is consistency, like you said, which you learned from Arjun, because I think that is key. Genuinely, if you're consistent and go at it, that's what helps you grow. And the second thing, like Arjun, you said, learning. If you're young and don't hesitate to reach out to whoever you can. They'll get on a call with you. And I really believe in this. You can learn from any and everyone. They don't have to be a CEO of a company. They don't have to be somebody who's got $1 million in the bank, but they could teach you something, right? So I think that
I learned last night from a really young guy who started a sneakers trading business.
Okay.
The whole world of sneakerheads, and like how I knew it was a big thing in the US, but I realized about this sort of underground culture in India and how now people are trying to look at sneakers like stocks. So you invest in a sneaker and then you make money off that sneaker and you sell. It's amazing. And I never knew about this. So yeah, you can learn from anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to ask you one more question about, of course, now we're in COVID times. It's been almost 2 years. We will be 2 years in this pandemic. Do you think the world of Ayurveda has picked up in a time like this? Do you think Dr. Vaidya's, I wouldn't want to say benefited, because you're also doing something, you're benefiting a customer, but do you think it's really helped people understand the importance and value of Ayurveda? So one of you want to take that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's made Ayurveda mainstream much more than it was. I think immunity was a luxury in India, right? All of us health and wellness folks tried to sell immunity products before March 2020 and failed miserably. That changed, right? Immunity became a necessity, and people understood the importance of vitamin C, of amla, of ashwagandha, of kadha, etc. All of that. Now, kadha was this like super uncool thing that nobody wanted to have. It became the coolest thing in April and May. Everybody wanted to launch a kadha. We launched 2 kadhas. So I think, look, it definitely did bring the science to the mainstream. Also, I think the government did a good job by saying that, hey, by the way, like take Chyawanprash, take Amla, take Ashwagandha, take Kadha. It did help. I think, look, Ayurveda brands, as companies, the government was very clear that we had to stay open. And so Dr. Vaidya stayed open. We were shut for 10 days. I think 21st March to like early April, we were shut. Okay. Otherwise, we were open, and I was in office every single day through 2020, staying open, because we literally spoke to the commerce minister, and he said, guys, you have to stay open, to all of us, not just like any specific large or small companies, everyone. He just get on monthly calls with us and say, what's the update? Do you have anything new? Is there any research you've done, etc.? So I think we stayed open. I think for the industry, though, one thing which a lot of us spoke about as well is, so customers will come in for immunity, and that's great. But it's our responsibility now to use this and show them everything else that Ayurveda has to offer, right? So if you
Yeah.
come in for a Amla effervescent vitamin C tablet, or if you come in for a fruit and veggie wash or a sanitizer, I still have a whole world of cough and cold and digestion and allergies that I can talk to you about, right? And that's really important. That's what we focus on, right? We'll bring all of these customers in from India, but we'll show them the real power of the science. So I think it was I think one of the few industries that did reasonably okay is health and wellness. But I think the opportunity ahead is that now immunity is part of your life, right?
Yeah.
Health and wellness is part of your life. You now understand the importance. So now keeping with that is also important going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to ask you guys one more question about investment funding. When I talk to startups, the first thing is we want to be funded. Now, you don't realize that that's not your end goal always. And, so much comes with just getting money from someone else and getting funded. So did you guys always know, Trisha, I'll ask you this first. Did you guys always know that you wanted to sell out? Did you guys always have that plan in mind? Because when entrepreneurs start out, what do you think they should think about?
Honestly, not at all. And I don't recommend that that's an outlook that an entrepreneur necessarily has. We didn't have an outcome that we wanted to sell. We had an outcome that we wanted Dr. Vaidya's to be, modernize Ayurveda, make people of our generation learn about Ayurveda, reach people in India where mainstream Ayurveda wasn't reaching, give free consultations. I think that was our vision. That was our goal. Yes, we got a good opportunity is what I want to say. We were a bit lucky as well. We got a good opportunity. We had a bit of luck on our side that gave us this outcome. But we never started Dr. Vaidya's with the end of exiting the company, and selling it. Like I remember the day we told our employees, it was one of the toughest days, like one of the toughest days, right? Because even they couldn't understand or fathom that why we would do it in a way, right? Like, what do you mean Dr. Vaidya's without Arjun and Trisha? It just didn't. It took some time, right? It took us also a lot of time because we were living, eating, breathing Dr. Vaidya's, right? Like I told you, 99.9% of a day. But we didn't do it with the intention to sell. We didn't start it for that reason. I don't even think the ecosystem was as developed maybe for us to know that much. Right now, you have many more outcomes that are coming and many newer models coming into this space that may allow that more.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the vision we started with. I think it was just happened to be our path.
Yeah. Arjun, what about you? What was the process like?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, right, that like when I was in private equity, it just seemed like raising capital was like I was just wanting that article in your story and to say like Dr. Vaidya has raised their Series A round. I dreamt about it, but reality is like now that we're on the other side of the table and we do some investing ourselves in the ecosystem and stuff.
Yeah.
There are a lot of founders who talk to us and we just say you don't need the money. Like why would you raise money? It's painful, and doesn't make sense for you, right? So there has to be a reason. It's a very tactical thing, and unfortunately, I was in private equity, so I got to understand that really early. It's not a success when you raise money. It's like you're walking on the street and then suddenly you're put on a treadmill, but you have to keep up with that treadmill as well, right? You can't just because you're responsible for other people and other people's money, and it's hard-earned money as well. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is a lot of founders. Like I've spoken to more than 100 founders who said like, "How did you sell? Like, tell me, even I want to sell." And the worst thing that people can do is set up a business to sell, right? The reason someone will buy it is because it's a really high quality business or brand that has a long legacy. We built Dr. Vaidya's for the rest of our lives, right? That's what, when we started, we said, we're going to do this forever. Like there's no end goal and end time. And that's why it became a valuable asset, right? For whoever wanted to buy it. So I think that's the way we thought about it. And that's the way we'll think about everything else that we do or whenever we do something again soon.
Yeah, so these are my last two questions for you. And I want to ask you, it's very cliche to say, give some advice to college graduates or, people starting out. But because you guys have literally been through that process at a very young age, right? You've come in, worked those 18 hours, come from jobs, started your own thing, and finally sold today. It's definitely a huge learning for you. But is there any one thing that you'd share to anyone looking to start a company of their own or build something like this?
Yeah, so I'll say I have three things I usually say. I talked about grit and resilience.
Yeah.
The other two things I'll say is one is that look, people may believe otherwise, but to me, entrepreneurship or a business cannot be a side hustle. You can't be in a job full time and be doing this on the side and wait till it picks up to then leave your job. I've seen a lot of people do that. totally not a proponent for that. My dad always says you can't be slightly pregnant, you're in or you're out.
Correct. Great
So I
advice.
think that's the first thing. The second thing I talked about grit and resilience. The third thing is you can't do it alone. We love to believe that we can do it ourselves,
Yeah.
but Dr. Vedya's was not Dr. Vedya's without our 150 team members and our 1.5 million customers, right? It's not just Trisha and me. And so I think that those are the two things that we learned being sort of young founders who made a lot of mistakes on the journey.
Yeah, yeah. Trisha, I want to ask you the next question, actually. Both of you, but Trisha, I'm going to start with you. So, networking is a very big thing for me. I think I realized that with the power of community and the power of connecting people, you can actually achieve a lot. And it doesn't cost much. And it's something you do because I enjoy connecting people, right? So what is networking to you? Do you think it's really helped you in the process of Dr. Vaidya's?
So I'm actually I'm much more shy than Arjun. So for me, networking wasn't as forthcoming, I would say, as maybe to you or Arjun for that matter. I didn't do it unless I had to do it, to be very honest. But the little that I did do, I just realized that it is very powerful, right? Networking, not for the sake of networking. So I'm very different. Like I will want to talk to someone to have a particular outcome of that conversation, right? The outcome could be to learn something new, right? It doesn't have to only be very focused in terms of quantifiable learnings, but it has to be something I learn as well. Or I have to be able to add value to then the person I speak to as well. But I saw Arjun, so it's actually better that he answers it, but I will tell you from my view that I saw him do a really good job with networking, right? Getting Arjun Vaidya's name out there, getting Dr. Vaidya's name out there. As he said, right? Finding hacks to reach out to new people.
Yeah.
People don't always reply on emails. So we always used to tell the team, so what? What's next? Do you DM them on LinkedIn? Do you write to them on Instagram? How do you need to try and reach the person? And when you do, like there are some people, and I'll let Arjun tell you the Zomato story, but you have people who are maybe much more accomplished, but they do have that respect to write an email to you and to reply to you as well. And I think every time I've actually had the opportunity to network, I've always learned something new and I've really enjoyed it. I think personally, I've always needed a little push to do it. And that's actually one of the things I'm focusing on now is trying to get myself a little bit more out of my little comfort bubble. But I think it's all about learning, right? Like I don't see why we can't learn from each other. So I look at it as learning.
Yeah, that is a big one. Arjun, you?
Yeah, for me, honestly, I found that entrepreneurship was an amazing journey for us because we got to meet some of the coolest people in the world, right? And we got to go to the most remote parts of this country and sell. And I was in Assam, I was in Meghalaya selling. And I remember a story of I flew from our board meeting in Calcutta to Guwahati, and the guy who drove me to my hotel was an army commander who had retired and sort of now was driving Olas. And the conversations that I got to have with him, or like the story about Zomato, right? So when lockdown happened, Zomato started selling essentials, right? And I think I thought it was like the perfect place to sell Dr. Vaidya's products. And so I reached out to someone who was in the Bombay team and they said, no, it doesn't make sense. And I was like, no, it makes sense to me. So I just wrote a cold call email to Dipinder, the founder of Zomato. And I said, look, I'm XYZ. This is what I have. I'm not going to waste your time, but I want to do this. And honestly, I just need to find the right person in your team. In 15 minutes, he replied to me saying, dude, spot on. Makes total sense. Here are 3 people in my team. They'll take it forward. One day later, the same person who said no to me said yes to me, right?
Wow.
So honestly, like for me, I love speaking to new folks. I don't like the forced networking sort of aspect of it. But hey, like if there's someone that I respect, even today, I will reach out to them on LinkedIn. I will write them a cold call email, whether they're in India or they're in the US or they're in Europe, wherever they are. I have done this, and look, like maybe when I started, 1 out of 10 people replied. Now maybe 3 out of 10 people reply.
Yeah.
Some that don't, it's fine. Like there's no shame in writing that email if they don't reply. But the 3 that reply can lead to the most meaningful things, right? Our investors found us and then DM'd me on LinkedIn, and see where that ended up, right?
Wow. Okay. That's, yeah.
CEO of the group that bought us, FMCG division, he wrote to me on LinkedIn, cold message saying, I like what you're doing. Can we chat? That ended up being a life-changing outcome for us. You never know.
Yeah, I think you never know. And like you said, I've noticed this one thing with me, that like I reach out to say the 10 people, and somehow maybe 2 years later, 4 years later, I do end up connecting with those people.
Yeah,
You know, somehow it just happens. So like you said, I think you both explained it really well. My last question for you is, what's next for Arjun and Trisha? Now that you guys have time on your hands after 18 hour days, what's next? I'm sure lots of people have asked you this. So Trisha, you want to go first?
No, I'm gonna let Arjun go first on this. I'm gonna let him answer this.
So yeah, I think we've got this question at least 200 times over the last 2 months.
Yeah.
The answer is we don't know yet exactly what's next, and we're thankful that we have this time, right? Like I spoke to so many people who said, I've never had this time in my life, and most people don't get this, right? So first, thankful to God that we got this time to sort of stop, reset, and think about what's next. But until then, we're actually like giving back to the D2C ecosystem. So that's something we're very passionate about, consumer brands. So we are active angels now. We've invested in a bunch of companies. We're also we also mentor founders who
lovely.
we like and like us. So we spend time with 7 brands on a sort of structured basis. They take our time and we work with them to sort of scale. We work with a revenue-based financing fund now called GetVantage's Venture Partners. Help them with their portfolio and as advisors. And then the most fun is actually we teach. So we wrote a playbook on building a consumer brand online in India because there was no such resource. And we've already sort of completed one cohort. We'll complete another cohort in the next 2 weeks. Next Wednesday is the last day. So that's already 70 people who have started, want to start, or want to move their offline business online, who just gained some sort of knowledge from our 4 years.
Wow. Arjun, when you started the answer, you said we have a lot of time on our hands. When you ended the answer, I don't think you have much time on your hands.
That's what I was going to say. We don't have that much time on our hands.
Yeah. So how does one access this for anyone that's watching and wants to? The last thing you said about the handbook that you've written.
Yeah, so we didn't write it as a book because that gets forwarded on WhatsApp, and then the value is not the same, right? Because it's not just information on paper. So every month we're teaching different courses. So it's all on my LinkedIn.
It's on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, we'll have a few more. We'll have a few more soon.
Okay, so when I do release this episode, I will share also for those that don't follow. My last question, of course, when you got one order, you celebrated 10 orders, you celebrated 100, 11,000. Today you've sold. What did you sell it? What did you do with your team? How did you celebrate that?
So unfortunately, it was in the middle of lockdown, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
We didn't really meet everyone as much as we wanted to. The team made, I think, our last day one of the most memorable days I've ever had. Literally, it was just amazing. They really put in a lot of effort, made us feel a bit too special also. I think we got a bit spoiled. But it was just a lot of fun. They put a really good video together. A lot of lovely messages were sent. And that's how we celebrated. We did give a little gift. We've got a little gift to give everyone, and we were hoping we would be able to give each person, the gift in person. But I just don't think that with the pandemic, it's possible, to be honest. But yeah, I think we just spent a lot of time with them, and we still are in touch with most people within the team.
Yeah, that's nice. Guys, thank you. It's been so lovely chatting with you, and more success to you. Lots more coming your way, I'm sure. And I've learned so much just chatting with you today. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Shan. Thanks so much for having us.
See you soon. Bye.